everyone, it's Captain Oro here with a video on Pokemon Champions. Now we've only had Pokemon Champions for a few days, with the game being released on April 8th, 2026. I want to give you a couple of initial thoughts around the game, my thoughts on Regulation MA, the available Pokemon in the game, and the available items in the game as well. After that, I want to chat about the future of this channel and the content that you can expect from the channel. But before that, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Captain Oro, or Simon. I've been a European competitor in the scene for over 3 years, competing at multiple internationals and regionals, with my best results being at Gdansk 2025, where I finished top 64, and I won the Liverpool Cup, or what it used to be called the Mid-Season Showdown 2024, where there was over 200 competitors. So as mentioned, I wanted to discuss the initial game Pokemon Champions. Now, I know there's been a lot of mixed reviews on the game so far. However, so far I found the game to be majority positive. Now, by this I mean a lot of the mechanics or issues that other people have experienced, I haven't experienced myself. That might impact other people's perceptions of the game, so that's something I am taking into account when I'm speaking about my experience and my initial thoughts. So this is all personal opinion. If you have had those experiences of bad issues on the game, then hopefully they will get resolved with the patch update that's happening tonight. In regards to the game, my initial experience issues wise were probably more with Pokemon Home. A couple of times when I tried to transfer Pokemon over, it wasn't so clear of what I needed to do, or I had issues getting them across where eventually they wouldn't go into the box a couple of times, had Pokemon Home crash on me a couple of times, and then when I got them across, I was able to get them into the boxes quite easily. Once they were in Champions, they were there. That was fine. It was the initial path of accessibility from getting them into Home, into Champions there. That was the issue I had myself. That might have been because obviously Pokemon Home is an online system and lots of people were doing the same thing I was doing myself, moving large numbers of Pokemon over to their Pokemon Champions. So that might have caused the initial disruption that I felt. However, I have had friends who had initial disruptions when they weren't able to move Pokemon over, or they had thought they had moved Pokemon over successfully to have lost them for a little while and then them being returned to Pokemon Home. There was an initial gap where people had glitches where the Pokemon didn't appear in Champions or in Pokemon Home. In regard to the game itself, I'm actually quite pleased with some of the graphics. I know some of the people are speaking about the models. I think with Pokemon I have a lower expectation in terms of some of the models, not being like a platinum rated game like you would speak around with like God of War or Elden Ring. I think Pokemon decide on those choices to keep the game quite aesthetically towards the anime more than towards what other games are offering up in that, and they rely on the Pokemon battling or the Pokemon story that they've built in the games to draw in the crowd. In regards to the features that you can see on the screen, I think it's quite clean for the UI. I've been quite impressed with a lot of the information that I've been able to gather in battles as well. There are settings that do allow you to switch on when weather is on. I would recommend that yourself. So if you do go into your settings, you can find it where it will tell you at the top corner where you can click the flee button. You can see that. Now that's also something that I've been impressed with itself. Normally you have to wait for turns to play out and play through, even though you might have lost the game. You know you're in a losing position and you can quit out instantly. Now this, for myself as an experienced player and other experienced players, we can tell when the games have come to an end. However, I have played a few games where my opponents early on have quit out quite in a winning position when they had out into those games. So sometimes for younger players where they don't know if they're going to win or not, my advice to you, if you're a newer player, play that game out to the end. Let your opponent, if you think you might have a chance, or you don't have a chance, try and play that game out, see what happens, learn from those ways the opponent has played and take that information. It's important. It's very easy to spam these games. The game's length are very, very short from what I've found myself, and you're able to play games very, very quickly. So spending an extra couple of minutes on a game to finish and see how your opponent closes out a game and learn how to close out a game strongly is a good skill. Become analytic when you're playing the game and think about, okay, what got them to the path of victory, and that would be my little advice for newer players. One of the systems I would like to talk about, and obviously it was a big discussion, is the training system. So I'll just go into the patch here. Obviously we have the training system. Now, one of the things I think the community weren't too happy about were obviously the replica teams. We're so used to rentals where our favorite content creators or favorite players put up rentals of their team with a little code. We use the code and we get the 6 mons as is. Replica teams make you have the Pokemon, so if you don't have the Pokemon for that team, you can not complete that 6 and have all the Pokemon there. Now, I haven't tried replica teams myself as of yet, so I don't know whether if you click a replica team and let's say all you wanted was that person's Archaludon spread, you could steal that Archaludon spread off that paste. That's something I need to have a look at myself, but it's not something I've done as of yet, as I'm waiting for more replica teams come out, as I'm looking to work on teams myself as well. In regard to the Pokemon training, I've actually found it quite pleasantly easy to do. Now, my biggest worry was about the victory point cost of training up a Pokemon. Now, if we go into this Archaludon here, which is a rental that I brought from yesterday from the farm, it's quite easy to move status bars up and down to create a Pokemon in the VP. Now, you don't get punished for taking the stats up or returning them into something that they already were. However, if I now move them back down to 0 and I go into a different stat and move them into these stats, you can see the VP cost goes up. Now, the VP cost itself isn't large, as you can tell. It goes up in 5 increments. So for me to complete a full stat up to the full 32 cost me 160. Now, if I do that across all stats with everything included, it will only cost me a few thousand to complete a full Pokemon if I was to change the nature, ability and moveset. Now, this can be easily completed within game, though I would recommend that if you do have previous games, that you, before sending them over into home, you have a look if they're the correct EVs on the Pokemon alongside the moves, as they do all transfer over, which was a pleasant surprise for a lot of VGC competitors in the game. Now, one of the second aspects I wanted to talk about in the game was the availability of Pokemon, one of them being from the recruit section. Obviously, this game has been hyped up as a free-to-play game. One of the things being box space was discussed, and how you recruit Pokemon if you're a completely new player with no previous games. I do think it's quite possible to recruit Pokemon quite a lot, however it will require you to have a lot of VP to re-roll the recruitment of Pokemon and then fully recruit a Pokemon. If you go into the farm, you can basically select and view your current lineup, and if you wanted to select a Pokemon like this Gardevoir, you have the options of a trial recruitment, a permanent recruitment through VP or tickets. The tickets are quite useful if you do have them. They are quite easy and you do get them quite a lot by completing objectives throughout. As mentioned, I wanted to speak about the available Pokemon in Pokemon Champions. Now, with over 108... Now, I did want to speak about the available Pokemon in Pokemon Champions with over... Now, I did want to speak about the available Pokemon in Pokemon Champions. With 186 Pokemon available, it does allow for a diverse meta. However, there are some standout Pokemon around the meta. This is important to keep track of, and the available list can be found on Cerebi, so it can make it easier for you to recognize which Pokemon are available in Pokemon Champions before looking to transfer them over from your game into home and then into Champions. There are quite a few good Pokemon and a lot of megas that have been introduced during this game. If you wanted to have a look at the list, I will pop this down in the list below. However, there are a few Pokemon that are not available that were speculated to be in the game because they had previously been in demo trailers or in the demo game at PAX. One of the biggest Pokemon that was missing was Ursaluna, Dondozo, which was obviously featured in the very first trailer that we had for Pokemon Champions, and then two of people's favourites old megas was Mega Metagross and Mega Salamence, obviously with the base forms not being available in the game either. Now, something to note in this available list is you do have Pikachu and Raichu available, Pikachu being the only non-fully evolved Pokemon available in the game, and it does have the Light Ball available in the game but no Eviolite. Whereas with Raichu, we have Raichu in its base form and Alolan form, however we're not got access to the Mega Raichu X and Y. That's something they've distinctly picked and chosen not to involve these Pokemon, including the new Megas, and there's a couple of other Megas that I haven't included, like Garchomp Z and Lucario Z as well. In regard to the new Mega Pokemon that have been introduced into the game, we have a list of all the abilities thanks to Joe at Cerebi. I would suggest checking this out because it will give you details of the typing of the Megas alongside the abilities and what those abilities do. Now, in regard to the new Megas, some of the abilities were leaving me less than wanting on some of them. Something like Chandelure, where it had a good ability like Flash Fire, now has got the worst ability in Infiltrator, which it already had. We just predominantly played with Flash Fire Chandelure when it was available in the meta. Some of the other available Pokemon where I was actually pleasantly surprised by their ability were Pokemon like Mega Floette, who got Fairy Aura, and Mega Glamora, who got adaptability. It was speculated it was going to get Levitate, but adaptability actually makes up for the loss of its ability to hold Power Herb and actually makes it hit Pokemon hard without needing that item. Now, I just wanted to cover something that Joe has covered on here. As I mentioned, I wanted to cover the available Pokemon, and for newer players or older players who like getting their gifted Pokemon, some of these Pokemon turn up in Cherish Balls as well, which is one of my favourite Pokeballs to get any Pokemon in. There is a list on Joe's website below that shows you the available Pokemon that you can get for certain achievements alongside special codes and early download gift on Pokemon Champions. So I would highly recommend getting these Pokemon, as some of them are already meta relevant. Dragonite has been seen quite a lot. People will enjoy playing with Meganium and Gardevoir as well, and for Alligator. So they're definitely worth getting and picking up, and then you don't have to spend VP later down the line to pick up these Pokemon. One of the aspects that obviously shocked many experienced VGC players was the amount of held items in the game itself. There weren't a lot of power leveling items. Most of them were kind of base items like Dragon Fang and Fairy Feather that only boosts moves that the holder holds. So for example, with Sylveon, the Hyper Voice being on Pixelate is a fairy type, and then you add the Fairy Feather for additional damage. Now, this is an interesting aspect of those items because it makes you think about what moves you're selecting to get those stab boosts alongside the item boost, but it also gives a different flavor to the game as well, where Sylveon with its Hyper Voice would normally run Throat Spray to get that multiplier boosted on all of its attacks, which would then allow you to play other attacks that it might have in its moveset. Now, obviously, big things that have changed is we've only actually got one item in Choice Scarf rather than having Choice Specs and Choice Band, which boosts your special attack and attack respectively. I don't mind these changes to the items. I think initially I was a bit taken back not having items like Life Orb, Assault Vest, Covert Cloak and Clear Arm that I've come used to in the past 4 years playing Scarlet and Violet. However, the limited items has made planning a team and thinking about the meta quite a challenge, and something that's been quite enjoyable when playing out these teams as well. I think the interesting one is involving Choice Scarf and not Choice Specs or Choice Band. However, I get the idea behind involving Choice Scarf because it allows certain Pokemon to hit a higher speed tier, like I've seen a lot of Scarf Garchomps around, to outspeed the faster Pokemon in the meta. Now, I did want to obviously speak a little bit around the game. There's a couple of interesting tweets out from different people, one of them being from Pokémon events, showing that Fake Out only initially works on the first turn. So we used to be able to click Fake Out to avoid priority moves like Sucker Punch or Thunderclap, where the move was based off of if your opponent attacked. Now, this became a mind game for the opponent. Whether I click Sucker Punch and they click Fake Out, it will fail and they only have a maximum of 8 PP on those moves, or whether I just go for an attack, get outsped and get attacked by the opponent's Pokemon. So overall, it's an interesting aspect of play. I can kind of understand why they've removed this for beginner players, because I wouldn't say it's the most complex mechanic to learn. However, it might be complex to learn that you can click these moves to dodge those points and play that mind game. So potentially they're trying to make these games a little bit more beginner friendly, as they've mentioned before, so that people get involved. Potentially you might see later down the line that they decide to update that and change that again as a mechanic for more experienced players, and allowing the player base to experience that for the first time as well. Another tweet is from Zoolite Poke, who shows off, and I'll get these images in full, the spectator mode. This has been a mode that people have been wanting for a little while in game. Unfortunately, it won't be on the ranked ladder battles, but when you set up friendly battles, you will be able to go into a spectator mode where you'll be able to watch it as if watching it from a competition. I think this will be really good for people watching these games. So when we're playing tournaments, it'll be really good for people to stream alongside these, seeing these screenshots. They look very clean, very kind of open. You can see everything going on the screen. Everything's kind of clean. You can see the full team that's out as well, and then you can see the actions from the other side as well. So I think this will be quite an interesting aspect to see. I'm interested to see the next few big tournaments, especially the ones on Limitless, the one being run by Scraw and his team. That will be interesting to see how they'll take advantage of this. I know they've already got into discussions of how they're going to do that, and I'm really interested to see how that goes for them. The next one is just showing some animations. So as we mentioned, this clip just played a little bit early, but the Sylveon using Hyper Beam, some of the move animations have been fantastic. Just seeing these kind of graphics involved has been really good. I really love the Earthquake mechanic and Waterfall, and I even think Kowtow Cleave from King Gambit has been upgraded as well. We originally saw Shadow Ball in one of the trailers and it looked clean as well, so I'm really glad some of the moves has got a bit of an upgrade. There's a couple of moves that maybe are not as good as they used to be with some of them. I did see D-Dance and I was hoping that the Pokemon would kind of like move around, but it just got the stat boost raised across it, so maybe there was something there that could be boosted that way. One of the final tweets I want to talk about is Federico Camparonese's tweet around his general thoughts on the game. He talks around a couple of Pokemon on this one. He does mention some initial thoughts on it around this. So he does mention with the top 3 megas being Charizard Y, Gengar and Floette, with a lot of the other megas potentially being more difficult to play around, with these 3 being in the meta games. He also mentions about the items missing. He does mention one of the factors that I didn't mention, which was potentially facing a lot of Quick Claw and Bright Powders. It's weird that they've included these items, because obviously they increase RNG chance going in the favour of your opponent, which isn't potentially a very beginner friendly way to learn. and it doesn't sometimes explain, like when a bright powder gets procced, that you've missed your move because of the bright powder. For someone who's new to the game, not having anyone playing it with them or friends watching them, and then seeing this happen might not be explained, and they might think it's a glitch in the game rather than actually a game mechanics that's actually normal to happen with these items, and potentially players taking advantage of these items. So those are my thoughts to do with Pokemon Champions. Those are my initial thoughts to do with Pokemon Champions. And I actually think, obviously, being a VGC competitor, I wanted it to be in a more advanced stage. And I think a lot of us did with people who have previous experience at competitions. However, I've had a few friends pick up the game who are complete beginners, and some people who played the game when they were a lot younger, so their understanding of the game isn't that high, or they're learning to play with their favorite Pokemon. And that's been interesting for me myself, seeing them learn the game, learning what they understand about the game, and teaching them how to play the game. Also building teams with some of their favorite Pokemon. Some of them, I will say, if you look at it from a competitive stance point, are just not optimal Pokemon. They're not the strongest, let's say, to be in a team. However, it's been quite fun and quite a challenge to support them and try and teach them ways to win with their favorites. It reminds me of when I first started and built after watching Wolfie win the Players' Cup, building a Colossus team with my favorite Pokemon from Arena, and using Aquajet to proc the weakness policy instead of the Aquajet Dragapult that Wolfie used to use. So it's a timely reminder that we all of us used to start at that position, looking at various Pokemons that were some of our favorites, and maybe not all of them being optimal in the long term of the game, looking for results wise. But in general, obviously, we want to have fun with this game. Now, in regard to the future of the channel, I wanted to start streaming and putting out YouTube content again. I used to do this during Scarlet and Violet for a small period of time. However, due to personal circumstances, I didn't have the time or, unfortunately, the energy to complete those tasks and stream on live as well. It's something that I've missed and something that I had in mind since Champions was announced that I wanted to get back into, and I'm excited for the game going forward. I think it has a lot of growth around the game and potential mechanics or new Pokemon or new items which we weren't expecting to be removed from the game, added back into the game. So for me, there's a lot of growth in this game, and I'm very, very excited for it. Now, from a personal circumstance as well, it holds me accountable to play the game regularly, and I felt like when I did do that, I became a better player, whereas with my time taken up by other events going on in my life, I was unable to practice as regularly as I wanted to. So me streaming regularly actually helps me prepare for the tournaments, and in that regard, I've been fortunate enough to get a ticket for the Turin special event at the end of the season. This is exciting for me for two reasons. I haven't been to Italy for a very long time, and I've never been to Turin. So this is exciting for me to visit a new place in the world. It's an exceptional opportunity that I'm very pleased to have, and I know that not everybody will have those opportunities to travel around Europe or around the world. So I'm very grateful to have that opportunity because of my full-time work and being able to have that time off. The second reason is obviously that Turin will be the first event in Europe to play under the Champions rule set. So it's obviously going to be a very, very competitive scene when we go there. This will obviously be very good for myself, as I'll want to do a lot of preparation into the game or into the tournament. So I'm looking to potentially do some videos focused around tournament prep, whether it be for my own tournament prep or advice on tournament prep. So those are a couple of things going into the future that you can expect going into this channel. Other aspects would be similar to what I've done before. So battle VODs with the stream coming over to the YouTube channel, potential I was about to say rental teams, but replica teams that people might want to replicate with codes available for them to use. As I mentioned, there's a lot of growth and there's a lot of for the game going forward, and I'm excited to see what Pokemon Champions brings for us as a community. But that's everything to be said for me. If you did like everything, make sure to leave a like and comment down below if there's anything that you would like to see on the channel going forward. But until then, we'll see you in the next video.